they threw a birthday party. There were balloons, pink frosting, candles glowing. Laughter bounced off the kitchen walls. Someone turned up the music. Everyone was clapping, singing, for my stepsister Emma. On my birthday, I stood in the doorway, alone, silent. I was holding a gift I had wrapped for myself, gold paper, a silver ribbon. I even wrote my own name on the tag, but no one said it out loud. Not a single glance, not one slice of cake, not even from Corinth, a woman who once whispered that I was her whole world. Have you ever felt so erased that you started to wonder if you were ever really loved at all? If you're going through something like this right now, comment the number 1 so I know I'm not alone. Like this video if you've ever felt invisible inside your own home. Subscribe if you believe that even forgotten stories deserve to be heard. Because my name is Helena, and this is the story of how I was slowly replaced in my own family, but also how I found peace in the most unexpected way. After my dad died, Karen and I became not quite a family, but something like a fragile team. She was his second wife. I was his only child. We mourned in different ways, but we stayed close enough to survive the grief. She made me pancakes on hard days. Let me sleep on the couch when the silence in my bedroom was too loud. Sometimes she'd say, "It's just you and me, Helena. We'll figure it out." I believed her. But grief doesn't always fade. Sometimes it just makes space for something new. Or someone. Karen met Mark at a conference. I remember the way she smiled when she said his name, like she was remembering how to hope again. He was kind, sure, polished, and he came with a package deal. 2 kids, Emma and Trevor. Emma had soft curls, a pink room, and a voice that never stopped dancing. Trevor was older, sharper. He walked through the house like he already owned it. They moved in quickly. Within 3 months, my bedroom was shifted, just for now, to make space. My seat at the table slid closer to the kitchen. And my name? It didn't echo through the hallway like it used to. Dinner was the first place I felt the shift. We used to eat on the couch, just Karen and me, sharing popcorn over bad sitcoms. Now we sat at the big table, formal, loud, structured. I reached for the bread basket one night. Karen moved it away closer to Mark. I didn't say anything. I just watched and realized something I'd never wanted to believe. You don't have to scream to disappear. You just have to be quiet long enough. And then came my 16th birthday. I woke up early. I wore the shirt Dad had given me 2 years ago. I even combed my hair and put on a little mascara. I went downstairs holding the gift I'd saved up to buy and wrap for myself. It was small, simple, but it meant something. I stepped into the kitchen and froze. There were party hats, streamers, a cake with glittering letters. Happy birthday, Emma. Karen was filming with her phone. Trevor was already on his second piece of cake. Mark was giving Emma a hug. No one looked at me. Not even for a second. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I walked out the back door, down the steps, and just kept walking. The air was sharp that morning, cold against my skin, but it felt better than the warmth I had just left behind. I passed the old swing set where Dad used to push me, the mailbox I'd helped paint years ago. Then I reached the edge of the neighborhood, where the sidewalk cracked and the streetlights flickered like they'd long grown tired. That's where I saw him. A boy sitting alone on the curb, sketchbook in his lap, ink smudges on his fingers, hoodie pulled over his head. He looked up. Our eyes met. Neither of us said a word. But in that moment of silence, he saw me. Not the girl no one noticed. Not the burden in someone else's family. He just saw me. I didn't know his name, didn't know his story, but I knew something had shifted. That moment under the flickering streetlight, it wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. After that night beneath the flickering streetlight after seeing Jonah, I came home later than usual. No one asked where I'd been. No one noticed the mud on my shoes, or that my jacket was too thin for the cold. Emma was showing off a new bracelet. Trevor was yelling into his phone on the couch. Karen was laughing at something Mark said. I slipped past them and went upstairs, still holding the gift I had wrapped for myself, unopened. That night, I sat in the dark, listening to the echo of laughter downstairs. At one point, I heard Karen say, "Emma deserved a beautiful birthday." Then her voice dropped lower, but I still caught the end of her sentence. "She's still not okay." She meant me. 3 days later, Karen told me to move out of my bedroom. Trevor needed a quiet place to study for finals. She didn't ask. She just came in, pulled the curtains open, and said it like it was no big deal. "You can use the storage room for now, just for a few weeks." I didn't argue, not because I agreed, but because I knew it wouldn't matter. The storage room smelled like old cardboard and paint. It had no door lock, no windows, just a mattress on the floor. Every time I shifted at night, I knocked something over. It didn't feel like a room. It felt like a place they put things they didn't want to see. One afternoon, I was eating a sandwich in the kitchen when Trevor walked in. He looked me up and down, sneering. "You look like an afterthought." I stayed quiet, but I didn't look away. He noticed, and that bothered him. "You know why my mom doesn't care about you?" he said. "Because you're the past, and people throw the past in the trash." Karen never heard things like that. Not because I didn't tell her, but because she didn't want to hear it. One evening, while she was folding laundry, I tried. I forced the words out, my voice shaking. "Trevor says some really awful things to me." She didn't even pause, didn't look up, just let out a tired sigh. "Helena, you're always so sensitive." That was it. I bit down on the rest of what I wanted to say, because, in her version of this family, I was the difficult one, the fragile one, the one who couldn't just move on. But what they didn't know was, I already had. Every afternoon after school, I started going back to that old bench by the road, and Jonah was always there. He never asked what was wrong. He didn't try to fix anything. He just sat beside me. Sometimes he handed me a pencil, and little by little I started writing music again. The first notes were shaky, just like my hands, but they were mine. They came from a place I hadn't touched in years. One day, Jonah gave me a drawing. It was of a bird drenched in rain, wings half spread, trying to fly. At the bottom, in small, messy handwriting, he'd written, "She didn't need saving, she just needed to be seen." I cried that day, not because I was broken, but because someone had finally seen me without me having to explain who I was. Karen didn't see me. Mark didn't see me. Trevor saw me only long enough to push me down. But me? I was starting to see myself, not as a mistake, not as a burden, not as someone begging to be chosen, but as a girl who had more in her than they ever bothered to notice. I didn't know exactly what was coming next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to stay a ghost in my own story, and they were about to find that out. Something inside me broke and it didn't make me weaker. It made me clear. Not like a fire, more like glass sharp, quiet, and impossible to ignore once the light hit it right. I started keeping a small notebook under my mattress in the storage room. It was nothing fancy, torn pages, soft cover, ink smudges, but it became the one place I existed without apology. I wrote music, sometimes only a few trembling notes, sometimes entire songs with no words. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And in that dusty corner they shoved me into, I started writing myself back into existence. One cold afternoon, Jonah met me at our usual spot on the bench. He was holding a brown paper bag, eyes tired but smiling. I found something, might be a little broken, but figured it deserved one more try. Inside was a battered old mini keyboard, a few chipped keys, a volume knob missing. I stared at it like it was a miracle. "My dad used to play," he said. "I think he'd like you to have it." I didn't say thank you. I couldn't. My throat had closed up, but he knew. He always did. Later that week, Miss Reyes, our school counselor, stopped me in the hallway. She always walked like she was carrying too many stories at once, but somehow still had space for one more. "I heard one of your music pieces from the talent night submission," she said. "You've got something rare, Helena. Have you ever thought of applying to the Young Creators program?" I blinked. "That one in Vermont?" She nodded. "Full scholarship available. Deadline's tight, but I think you should try." I stood frozen in the middle of the hallway as the world kept walking past me. No one had said, "I think you should try," in a very long time. That night, I stayed up till 2 a.m. recording a demo. Jonah let me use his phone and helped edit the audio on his glitchy laptop. The sound crackled. My voice shook. But when I listened to it back, I heard something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. 3 days later, Trevor found my notebook. I heard him before I saw him. "Yo, check this out. Mozart's making a comeback." He waved the pages like a flag. Karen walked in just as I reached for it. "Helena, what is this?" "My music," I said, quiet but steady. "She applied to some Vermont thing," Trevor chimed in, mock, innocent. Karen's expression shifted from confusion to irritation. "You should have discussed this with us. You don't make big decisions like this on your own." "Us?" She said it like we were still a unit. I looked at her and saw it clearly for the first time. "I didn't think you'd care." She flinched, only for a second, but it was enough. That night, I sat alone on the back porch with Jonah. He didn't ask what happened. He just passed me a cup of hot cocoa and leaned back beside me. Sometimes the deepest support is silence that says, "I see you." The next morning, Miss Reyes called me into her office. I was sure it was bad news. But instead, she smiled and said 5 words that changed everything. "You got in. Full ride." I couldn't breathe. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Because part of me had known all along. I could do this. I walked home that afternoon with the wind hitting my face, and for once, it felt like it was pushing me forward, not holding me back. When I stepped into the house, Karen was waiting. I got a call from the school. I nodded. "I'm leaving in 2 weeks." She sighed. "Helena, this isn't realistic." "It is for me." She paused. "You don't just walk away from family." I met her eyes. "I'm not walking away. I'm finally walking towards something." She didn't reply, but this time I didn't shrink. I didn't explain. I didn't beg. I turned, walked upstairs, and began to pack. I didn't pack like I was escaping. I packed like someone who was going home, not to a place, but to a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. And for the first time, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt found. I arrived in Vermont with a single suitcase, a keyboard in a pillowcase, and a heart that beat louder than it had in years. The air was thinner here, or maybe it just felt that way because for once I could breathe. The Young Creators campus wasn't huge. A few cottages, a studio, a cafeteria that smelled like burnt coffee and hope. My room had a real bed, a desk by a window, and silence that felt sacred. I didn't know a single person, but I had never felt less alone. In the first week, I wrote more music than I had in the last 2 years. Some nights I stayed in the studio past curfew. Some mornings, I woke up before the sun to record a melody that visited me in my sleep. People started noticing. A mentor named Clara pulled me aside after a workshop. "You write like someone who survived a fire," she said. "And you still smell like smoke." I didn't flinch. That's how you know I'm real. 3 weeks in, I was chosen to perform in the fall showcase. It wasn't just a student recital. It was a public event. Producers, journalists, alumni. The kind of crowd where your name could become more than a name, it could become a door. I practiced until my fingers ached. Jonah mailed me a hand-drawn postcard. A bird in flight. No words on it. He didn't need them. The day of the showcase, I wore a simple black dress and boots that clicked too loud on stage. My hands trembled, but my spine didn't. I played a piece called Quiet Girl. No lyrics, just piano, but it told the whole story. Loss, loneliness, fire, rebuilding. When I finished, the room was silent for a beat too long. Then applause came, slow but rising. And rising, someone stood up. Then another, and another. And in that moment, I didn't just feel seen. I felt remembered. 2 hours later, still glowing from the high, I was walking toward the refreshment table when I heard her voice. "Helena?" I turned. Karen stood there, in a beige coat too expensive for the occasion, holding a clutch she didn't need. Her eyes were wide, maybe even soft. She looked smaller. "I saw your name on the program," she said quickly. "Mark had a work trip nearby. I thought maybe I should come." I nodded, slow. She looked at me like she was searching for something on my face. Something familiar. "You were incredible." "Thank you. I didn't know you had that in you." I let the words hang for a moment. Then I smiled just a little. "That's okay. You weren't really looking." She blinked. I didn't say it with anger, but I didn't soften it either. Karen opened her mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to apologize, but I didn't give her that space. Instead, I reached for a napkin, picked up a cookie, and looked her in the eye. "I used to wish you would come back," I said. "I don't anymore, but I'm glad you saw it." "Not for me." "For you." She nodded, eyes glossy now. "I just hope you're happy." I tilted my head. "I am. Not because of you, not in spite of you, just because I finally chose to be." She didn't try to hug me, didn't ask to stay in touch. She just nodded once more and turned away, heels clicking quietly, like a guest leaving too late from a party she was never really invited to. That night, in my small room, I placed the cookie on the windowsill, unwrapped Jonah's latest sketch, and opened my notebook. I wrote a new title at the top of the page. Scene. It had been almost 2 years. 2 years since the night I walked out of that house with nothing but a suitcase, a broken keyboard, and a silent promise to never shrink again. Now, my name was on posters. My music, once written in secret, played on college campuses, in small theaters, on quiet late-night radio stations hosted by people who believed in underdogs. I wasn't famous. Not yet. But I was no longer invisible. I was invited to speak at a regional arts conference back in my hometown. Not for a performance this time. I was asked to sit on a panel. Helena Lane, composer, performer, voice for youth expression. The auditorium was bigger than I remembered. And colder. I stood backstage, watching the crowd gather, when I spotted them, Karen and Trevor, sitting in the 3rd row. Trevor wore a suit too big for his shoulders. Karen's hair was shorter, dyed darker, but the posture was the same, upright, polished, guarded. They didn't know I had seen them. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't change my tone. I didn't shift my story to make anyone comfortable. I talked about the importance of being silenced and finding your voice anyway, about how the people who were supposed to lift you sometimes step on you first, and how healing doesn't always come from apology. Sometimes it comes from deciding you're done waiting for one. When the panel ended, people clapped. Some stood. I smiled, thanked them, stepped off stage. Backstage, I turned a corner and found Karen waiting near the exit, alone. Her eyes were full of something between pride and shame. "You were powerful," she said. "Thank you." She hesitated. "You look happy." I paused, because I am. She looked down, then up again. "I didn't know you had this in you." I gave a soft laugh. Not bitter, just done. "You never looked close enough." I saw Trevor behind her, awkward in the hallway. He avoided my gaze, shuffled, then walked past without a word. It didn't hurt. It felt like walking past a closed door in a house I no longer lived in. Karen stepped forward slightly. "I'm sorry, Helena, for everything I didn't do, everything I didn't see." I nodded. Not out of forgiveness, but acknowledgement. "I know." She took a breath. "Is there anything I can do?" There was a time when I would have begged for that question. But now I didn't need anything from her. I looked at her kindly, but clearly. "You can go, that's enough." She nodded, biting her lip, and turned. No hugs, no grand closure, just truth. Later that night, I sat alone in my hotel room. Lights dimmed, keyboard by the window. I pressed a few notes soft, rising, free. Outside, the city moved on. And so did I. Some people never see your worth until it's reflected in a room full of applause. But by then, you don't need their eyes anymore. If this story found you at the right moment, if you've ever felt unseen, unchosen, or unheard, let Helena's voice remind you. You don't need their permission to heal. You don't need their apology to rise. And you never needed to be someone else to be worthy. If her journey moved you, give this video a like. Share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe to this channel for more stories that see you, hear you, and stand with you. And if you know someone who needs this story right now, share it. Because healing becomes real when we pass it on. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying. And most of all, thank you for believing in quiet girls with loud dreams.